everyone, and welcome to NAU Theater's Story Hour. Today is our 5th broadcast of Story Hour, and we will be reading some classic stories and poems today, including a story by Mr. Rudyard Kipling called Just So Stories, and we'll be reading the story of how the whale got his throat. We'll also be reading a very classic tale, The Three Little Pigs, and we'll end today with poems every child should know. So I am Miss Kathleen, and I will be joined very shortly by Miss Haley Jo and Miss Rebecca. I want to remind you that our stories today are for ages 5 to about 9, but we welcome kids of all ages. Let's get started with our first classic, How the Whale Got His Throat. But first, I want to tell you just a tad about the author. The gentleman who wrote this book is called Mr. Rudyard Kipling. He was born in India on the 30th of December, 1865. And he was an English journalist, and he wrote short stories and poems, and he also wrote novels. India inspired a lot of his work. In fact, some of you might even know one of his stories, because I know Disney made a movie, and there was another movie as well, and that was called The Jungle Book. And he also wrote one of my favorite stories called Kim, and many, many other short stories. Today's story about the whale comes from a book called Just So Stories for Little Children. Did you know that Mr. Kipling started writing this book by telling the first 3 chapters as bedtime stories to his daughter, Josephine? And the whale story that we're going to hear is the very first one. So he had to tell these stories just so. That's how they get their title. And he uses that phrase in the story, so look for it. But he had to tell them just so, otherwise Josephine would get very angry and start to complain. So the stories describe how the animals in this world acquired their most distinctive features, such as how the whale got his throat. So we're going to start that story right now. How the Whale Got His Throat by Rudyard Kipling. In the sea, once upon a time, oh, my best beloved, there was a whale, and he ate fishes. Oh, he ate the starfish and the garfish and the crab and the dab and the plaice and the dace and the skate and his mate and the mackerel and the pickerel and the really, truly, twirly, whirly eel. All the fishes he could find in the sea, he ate with his mouth. So, till at last there was only one small fish left in the sea, and he was the small 'stute fish. And he swam a little bit behind the whale's right ear so as to be out of harm's way. Then the whale stood up on his tail and said, "I'm hungry." And the small 'stute fish said in a very small 'stute voice, "Noble and generous cetacean, have you ever tasted man?" "No," said the whale. "What's it like?" "Nice," said the small 'stute fish. "Nice but nubbly." "Then fetch me some," said the whale, and he made the sea froth up with his tail. "One at a time is enough," said the 'stute fish. "If you swim to latitude 50 north, longitude 40 west, that's magic, you will find sitting on a raft in the middle of the sea, with nothing but a pair of blue canvas breeches, a pair of suspenders. You must not forget the suspenders, my best beloved, and a jackknife, one shipwrecked mariner, who, it is only fair to tell you, is a man of infinite resource and sagacity. So the whale swam and swam to latitude 50 north, longitude 40 west, as fast as he could swim. And on a raft in the middle of the sea, with nothing to wear except a pair of blue canvas breeches, a pair of suspenders. You might particularly remember those suspenders, my best beloved, and a jackknife. He found one single solitary shipwrecked mariner, trailing his toes in the water. He had his mummy's leave to paddle, or else he would never have done it, because he was a man of infinite resource and sagacity. Then the whale opened his mouth back and back and back till it nearly touched his tail, and he swallowed the shipwrecked mariner and the raft he was sitting on, and the blue canvas breeches and the suspenders, which you mustn't forget, and the jackknife. He swallowed them all down unto his warm, dark inside cupboards. And then he smacked his lips like so. And he turned around on his tail 3 times. But as soon as the mariner, who was a man of infinite resources and sagacity, found himself truly inside the whale's warm, dark inside cupboards, he stumped and he jumped and he thumped and he bumped and he pranced and he danced and he banged and he hit and he bit and he leaped and he creaked and he prowled and he howled and he hopped and he dropped and he cried and he sighed and he crawled and he bawled and he stepped and he lapped and he danced hornpipes where he shouldn't. And the whale felt most unhappy indeed. Have you forgotten the suspenders? So he said to the 'Stute-fish, "This man is nobly, and besides, he's making me hiccup. What shall I do?" "Tell him to come out," said the 'Stute-fish. So the whale called down to his throat to that shipwrecked mariner, "Come out and behave yourself. I've got hiccups." "Nay, nay," said the mariner, "not so, but far otherwise. Take me to my natal shore and the white cliffs of Albion, and I'll think about it." And he began to dance more than ever. "You'd better take him home," said the 'Stute-fish to the whale. "I ought to have warned you, but that man is a man of infinite resource and sagacity." So the whale swam and swam and swam with both flippers and his tail as hard as he could for the hiccups. And at last he was at the mariner's natal shore and the white cliffs of Albion, and he rushed halfway up the beach and opened his mouth wide and wide and wide and said, "Change here for Winchester, Ashlot, Nashua, Keene, and the stations of Fitchburg Road." And just as he said Fitch, the mariner walked out of his mouth. But while the whale had been swimming, the mariner, who was indeed a person of infinite resource and sagacity, had taken his jackknife and cut up the raft into a little square grating, all running crisscross, and he tied it firm with his suspenders. Now you know why you were not to forget the suspenders. And he dragged that grating good and tight into the whale's throat, and there it stuck. Then he recited the following sloka, which, as you have not heard it, I will proceed to relate it. By means of a grating, I have stopped your eating. For the mariner was also a Hibernian. And he stepped out on the shingle and went home to his mother, who had given him leave to trail his toes in the water. And he married and lived happily ever afterward. So did the whale. But from that date on, the grating in his throat, which could neither cough up nor swallow down, prevented him from eating anything except very, very, very small fish. And that is the reason why whales nowadays never eat men or boys or little girls. The small 'stute fish went and hid himself in the mud under the door sills of the equator. He was afraid that that whale might be angry with him. The sailor took the jackknife home. He was wearing the blue canvas breeches when he walked out on that shingle. The suspenders were left behind, you see, to tie to the grating with. And that is the end of that tale. And here is a little song, a little poem rather, which tells you why that particular place where the mariner was is so special. When the cabin portholes are dark and green, because the sea outside, when the ship goes whop with a wiggle between, and the steward falls into the soup tureen, and the trunks begin to slide, and the nursery lies on the floor in a heap, and mummy tells you to let her sleep, and you aren't walking or washed or dressed, why then you will know, if you hadn't guessed, you're 50 north and 40 west. The end. I hope you enjoyed that story. There are so many others that Mr. Kipling wrote in the book of stories called the Just So Stories. I hope you pick that up at the library soon. So next up, we have Miss Haley Joe, who's going to read a very classic story that we all know. Maybe you don't. I hope you do. It's called The Three Little Pigs. But before Miss Haley Joe reads, I would like to tell you a little bit about a little bit more modern version of The Three Little Pigs and encourage you to go to the library to get that one too. There is a writer in Tucson, Arizona, who wrote the story of the Three Little Pigs, but took those pigs and turned them into a type of pig, well, really a boar, that we have here in Arizona called a javelina. And she wrote a book called The Three Little Javelinas. And right now, I have a javelina. This is actually Josefina, or Josefina, javelina. And the very first story that our Arizona writer wrote is called Josefina Javelina. a hairy tail. So after you hear Miss Haley Joe's The Three Little Pigs, I hope you go to the library and get Josefina Javelina, a hairy tail. Haley Joe?
Hi friends, it's Miss Haley, and today I'm going to be reading to you the story of the Three Little Pigs. Once upon a time, there was an old sow with 3 little pigs, and as she had not enough to keep them, she sent them out to seek their fortune. The first that went off met a man with a bundle of straw, and said to him, "Please, man, give me that straw to build me a house," which the man did, and the little pig built a house with it. Presently came along a wolf, and knocked at the door, and said, little pig, let me come in." To which the pig answered, "No, no, by the hair of my chinny chin chin." "Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in," said the wolf. So he huffed, and he puffed, and he blew his house in, and ate up the little pig. The second pig met a man with a bundle of furs, and said, "Please, man, give me that furs to build a house," which the man did, and the pig built his house. Then along came the wolf, and said, little pig, let me come in." "No, no, by the hair of my chinny chin chin." "Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in." So he huffed, and he puffed, and he puffed, and he huffed, and at last he blew the house down and ate up the second little pig. The third little pig met a man with a load of bricks, and said, "Please, man, give me those bricks to build a house with." So the man gave him the bricks, and he built his house with them. So the wolf came, and as he did to the other pigs, and said, little pig, let me come in." "No, no, by the hair of my chinny chin chin." "Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in." Well, he huffed, and he puffed, and he huffed, and he puffed, and he puffed, and he huffed, but he could not get the house down. When he found that he could not, with all his huffing and puffing, blow the house down, he said, little pig, I know where there is a nice field of turnips." "Where?" said the little pig. "Oh, in Mrs. Smith's home field, and if you will be ready tomorrow morning, I will call for you, and we will go to get some and bring some home for dinner." "Very well," said the little pig. "I will be ready. What time do you mean to go?" "Oh, at 6:30. Well, the little pig got up at 5 and got the turnips, and was home again all before 6. When the wolf came, he said, little pig, are you ready?" "Ready," said the little pig. "I have been and came back again, and got a nice pot full for dinner." The wolf felt very angry at this, but thought he would be up to the little pig somehow or other. So he said, little pig, I know where there is a nice apple tree." "Where?" said the pig. "Down at Merry Garden," replied the wolf. "And if you will not deceive me, I will come for you at 5 o'clock tomorrow, and we will go together and get some apples." The little pig woke up at 4 the next morning, and bustled up and went off for the apples, hoping to get back before the wolf came. But he had farther to go, and had to climb the tree, so that just as he was coming down from it, he saw the wolf coming, which, as you may suppose, frightened him very much. When the wolf came up, he said, little pig, what? Are you here before me? Are they nice apples?" "Yes, very," said the little pig. "I will throw one down." And he threw it so far that while the wolf was gone to pick it up, the little pig jumped down and ran home. The next day, the wolf came again and said to the little pig, little pig, there is a fair in the town this afternoon. Will you go?" The wolf came again. "Oh, yes," said the pig. "I will go. What time shall you be ready?" "At 3," said the wolf. So the little pig went off before the time, as usual, and got to the fair, and bought a butter churn, and was on his way home with it when he saw the wolf coming. Then he could not tell what to do, so he got into the churn to hide, and in doing so turned it around, and it began to roll, and roll down the hill with the pig inside of it, which frightened the wolf so much that he ran home without going to the fair. He then went to the little pig's house and told him how frightened he had been by the great round thing which came down the hill past him. Then the little pig said, "Ha! I frightened you, did I? I had been to the fair and bought a butter churn when I saw you, and I got into it and I rolled down the hill." Then the wolf was very angry indeed, and declared that he would eat up the little pig, and that he would get down the chimney after him. When the little pig saw what he was about to do, he hung on the pot full of water and made it a blazing fire. And so just as the wolf was coming down, he took the cover off the pot, and in fell the wolf. And the little pig put the cover on again, and in an instant boiled him up and ate him for supper, and lived happily ever after. And that is the story of the three little pigs. Thank you for listening along today, guys. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you, Miss Haley Joe. That was great. And finally today, we are going to meet Miss Rebecca, who's new to Story Hour, and she is going to read some poems from a book called Poems Every Child Should Know. Have fun!
Miss Rebecca here. Today I will be reading Poems Every Child Should Know by various authors, edited by Mary E. Burt. But first, I need my reading bonnet. The Arrow and the Song, a poem by Longfellow. I shot an arrow into the air. It fell to earth, I knew not where. For so swiftly it flew, the sight could not follow it in its flight. I breathed a song into the air. It fell to earth, I knew not where. For who has sight so keen and strong that it can follow the flight of song? Long, long afterward, in an oak, I found the arrow still unbroke, and the song from beginning to end I found again in the heart of a friend. That poem was by Henry W. Longfellow. Here's a poem called The Baby. Her face is like an angel's face. I'm glad she has no wings. Nae shoon to hide her tiny taes, nae stocking on her feet, her supple ankles white as snaw, or early blossoms sweet. Her simple dress, oh sprinkled pink, her double dimpled chin, her puckered lips and balmy mouth, with now one tooth within. Her een say like her mother seen, twa gentle liquid things, her face is like an angel's face, we're glad she has nae wings. By Jeremiah Eames Rankin. Here's another poem that every child should know. Let Dogs Delight to Bark and Bite by Isaac Watts. Let dogs delight to bark and bite, for God hath made them so. Let bears and lions growl and fight, for 'tis their nature too. But, children, you should never let such angry passions rise. Your little hands were never made to tear each other's eyes. Here's a little poem called Little Things by Ebenezer Cobham Brewer. Little things. Little drops of water, little grains of sand, make the mighty ocean and the pleasant land. Thus the little minutes, humble though they be, make the mighty ages of eternity. Here's one many of you might already know. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky, when the glorious sun is set, when the grass with dew is wet, then you show your little light, twinkle, twinkle, all the night. In the dark blue sky you keep, and often through my curtains peep, for you never shut your eye till the sun is in the sky. As your bright and tiny spark guides the traveler in the dark, though I know not what you are, twinkle, twinkle, little star. And today I will end with the poem Pippa. And this poem was written by Robert Browning. Pippa. The years at the spring, the days at the morn, mornings at 7, the hillsides dew pearled. The larks on the wing, the snails on the thorn, God's in his heaven, all rights with the world. And let's give you one extra. The days of the month. It's a useful bit of doggerel that we all need in life, and it is written by, well, no one knows, anonymous. 30 days hath September, April, June, and November. February has 28 alone. All the rest have 31, excepting leap year. That's the time when February's days are 29.
I hope you all had fun today listening to these classic stories and poems. I know I did. I want to remind you that later our 6th broadcast will be up on YouTube, and it is more chapter stories. You don't want to miss this one. We're going to hear the end of Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. We'll also be hearing more from our new story, White Fang by Jack London, and continuing with the merry adventures of Robin Hood and the story of Dr. Dolittle. We want to thank you for joining us today and to remind you that Story Hour is our way to give back to the community, both locally and beyond. If you like what you see, please share our video and also like us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Well, all of our stories are in public domain, and if you want to read them, you can go online for many, many resources. Until next time, keep reading.